settle it down. UFC Vegas 94. We got an old school type of matchup, a real stylistic clash here. Virna, Jandiroba taking on Amanda Lemos, striker versus grappler here. I know a lot of you guys are very excited for this main event matchup. A little bit of sarcasm there. But in reality, it's an interesting fight. And besides the main event not being the biggest of fights, this card has a good amount of intriguing matchups throughout it, especially on the prelims. On the undercard, there's a lot of fights that I'm looking forward to. First and foremost, look who the cat dragged in. Brian Kelleher is showing face once again. Hopefully, my boy Cody Gibson will vanish him from the octagon, and we will never have to speak of Kelleher ever again. As you guys know, he was my original arch nemesis. We had an old school beef. If you don't really know about it, if you're newer to the channel, hit the comment section up below, and I'll shed some light there. I'm sure everyone will shed some light, but I'm not happy with Kelleher. He never reached out and apologized for what he did to the teller. Not happy with him there, and I think it'll be the last we see of him. So that'll be fun to tune into. Hyder, Amil taking on Jeong, Yeong Lee. That's an exciting fight. Two talented up-and-comers in the octagon. Loik, Radzhabov taking on Trey, Ogden. Ogden's been really on fire as of recently, so he's going to get tested there. The winner of that fight is going to be really making some noise. Bruno Silva making a return to the cage. He's not the most active fighter, but a very talented fighter, taking on Cody, Durden. That's a high-level flyweight bout there. I like the Mohammed Usman versus Thomas Petersen fight. Two heavyweights that are working on things, but I think that they will clash, and that will make for an exciting fight there. So all in all, this will be a fun fight card. I know the main card is not extremely stacked, but we will be going live when the first fight kicks off, and that will be Steve Garcia versus the Sting, Seung Choi. Okay, we will be going live. We will be doing our fight companion. As you guys know, we kicked that fight companion off for the first fight of the main card for every card. So shout out to everybody that joins me for those. And you guys know I'm constantly working on things behind the scenes. So it's going to be more and more interactive. We're going to have better and better guests joining us. And before you know it, give it a couple weeks, give it a couple months. It's going to be an absolute party when we're doing those fight companions. And you guys will make sure that you don't miss any of them. There'll be no other way to watch the fights when it's all said and done. Trust me. Wait till you guys see what I have in stored. All right. So you guys know we will have some spots to capitalize. We've been very hot. If you want to work with me for my official plays, do not hesitate to reach out. I'll give you further information. Shoot me a message through Instagram, Twitter, or email me. And do not forget, we are powered by BetUS. Sign up through the link in the description of this video. Get a 125% bonus match on your first 3 deposits. And if you do that, let me know so I can send you over an additional gift. All right, guys. Appreciate your patience. Let's go jump into the first fight.
Welcome to the show. This is the MMA fortune teller. Yeah.
The MMA fortune teller.
The teller.
The first fight that we'll be talking about is taking place in the women's flyweight division. Miranda Maverick taking on Dione Barbosa. Just take note that this may not end up being the first fight of the event. I have a hard time seeing this fight taking place before the Lucie Pudilová versus Luana Carolina fight. There's some time for things to be shuffled around, but we're here now. So this is the first fight we'll be talking about. Miranda Maverick, still only 27 years old, and she's been around for a while. People have been high on her. She's had some up and down performances, but when you take a look at her losses, at least in the UFC, they are against high-level competition. She had that loss against Jasmine Jasudavicius. She lost to Erin Blanchfield. She had a very close split decision loss to Macy Barber. A lot of people thought she should have won that fight. Other than that, though, she's got in there and she's handled business. She has respectable victories over fighters like Jillian Robertson, Sabina Mazo, Andrea Lee's a good fighter. But I really believe that we have not seen the best version of Miranda Maverick thus far. Also note, coming off that loss, or her last loss, coming by way of Jasmine Jasudavicius, she's been training with her. That's something that I always love to see. I love to see fighters get an opportunity to train with a fighter that recently defeated them. It really gives them an opportunity to sharpen up on some of their deficiencies. You see Thug Rose Namajunas there as well. Miranda Maverick training over at Team Elevation for some time as well. So this is a fighter that comes in prepared with good cardio, fighting out of the southpaw stance. She's very strong, very physical. She does a lot of things well. She's a well-rounded fighter. That's what I like about Miranda Maverick. But, you know, Her opponent, Dione Barbosa, this is a fighter that's underrated, right? She's coming into this fight a little bit under the radar. She's a Brazilian judo champion. She's a Brazilian jiu-jitsu black belt. She has some real tools down in the mat. Her striking's been looking decent as well. She's starting to evolve as a complete mixed martial artist. And like I'm saying, she's just a fighter that not a lot of people really know about. Us hardcore fans have seen what she's been doing, but some people might not really know what she's about and expect Miranda Maverick just to come in and steamroll her. I don't think that's necessarily the case here. We have actually seen Miranda Maverick struggle a little bit at times when she's not mentally checked into the cage against fighters that threaten her with grappling, right? Jasmine Jasudavicius was getting the better of those type of exchanges and kind of broke her down in that fight and kind of just mentally took her out of that fight. The Erin Blanchfield fight, that was a really tough performance from Miranda Maverick. She was a huge favorite there, and Erin Blanchfield was the bully there. She marched forward. She was the hammer, and Blanchfield just kind of fell into that nail role, right? She was the nail, and she doesn't really, I don't want to say that she's not a good nail because she's not going out there getting finished. She doesn't completely give in, but it's almost like when she starts to come up short in the beginning of the fights that she kind of falls into place there. She doesn't have a lot of comeback. She doesn't really pick up her momentum in those types of fights. So I think that the beginning of this fight is going to be crucial. Miranda Maverick has to start off hot, take control of this fight, and I am leaning towards that being the case. I think that Miranda Maverick will start off hot, and I am leaning towards her way to win this fight. We're going to get to the betting line here in a second. I'm not in agreement for where the betting line is. I think that it's a little off. It's a little bit of a risky line if you're targeting Miranda Maverick. But all in all, I was just rewatching Dione Barbosa's last fight against Ernesto Kirikate. That was a fight where she won a unanimous decision, but I thought that the fight played out a little bit closer than how that looked. It was a fight where Ernesto Kirikate outstruck her, but Barbosa had some crucial top position time throughout the fight, but she was reversed. It was kind of interesting too. Like in the first round, she had Kirikate's back and had her in a situation where I really thought she should have finished with the rear naked choke. I don't know how Ernesto got out of there, and Ernesto had some reversals down in the mat as well. And I think that Miranda Maverick will be more of a challenge or more of a threat even down there. I expect to see Miranda Maverick being the fighter that's on top in those types of positions. On the feet, I think Miranda Maverick will push with volume. She has good pop in her strikes as well, and I think she'll be the fighter that's aggressing and landing more volume throughout this fight. But also note that Dione Barbosa is a fighter that is pretty athletic, has good footwork and whatnot. She'll have a 1-inch reach advantage. She's about 3 inches taller. She's a little bit more lengthy, but Miranda Maverick has good footwork as well. I expect her to close the distance, and I think that she will be leading the dance a little bit more so in this fight, and I think she will hand Dione Barbosa her first loss in the UFC, as Dione Barbosa had that submission victory on Contender Series back in 2023 and then won her UFC debut. I think that she will taste defeat in the octagon for the first time. And also just note this, you take a look at Barbosa's losses outside of the UFC, or just some of the fights that she's had to kick off her career and a limited amount of fights, she's fought stiff competition. So I've seen some people saying, oh, Miranda Maverick is way more proven and it's more battle tested against higher level competition. Just note that Dione Barbosa has a victory against Karine Silva, who I'm very high on, back in 2019. She also was in there with Josiane Nunez, who I'm very high on. I think she's a tough chick. In that fight, I know she was knocked out and finished there in the second round, but in the beginning of that fight, she was winning that fight. She was getting takedowns and whatnot. And then she had a decision loss to Jenna Bishop, who is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, a fighter that has been making noise outside of the UFC. She's a good fighter, so she lost a decision there. Just know that Dione Barbosa is a good fighter. And do not be surprised if this is a fight that plays out closer than some of you guys think that it is. Okay, Miranda Maverick opened up as a minus 180 favorite on BetUS. She's now a 2-1 favorite. She's a minus 200. And I think that you just have to be a little wary, especially where I've seen that line even creeping up past minus 200. I mean, if you're tagging her at minus 230, 240, I think you're off. And I think if you're going to be on Miranda Maverick, you really want her under 200, and you're hoping that you got her earlier, or you're hoping that line dips back the other way. I don't think there's a ton of value on that line, but give me Miranda Maverick to win a decision, a decision that actually plays out somewhat close. Maybe we see a split decision here. You guys know how women's mixed martial arts is. A lot of these fights play out closely. I wouldn't be banking on a finish here. Miranda Maverick has never been finished, so I'm not necessarily sure Barbosa is going to find that sub there. Miranda Maverick is pretty technically sound defensively down in the mat. And Miranda Maverick is a fighter that really finishes her fights via sub, right? The majority of her finishes coming by way of sub. She only has one knockout. And Barbosa, being a high-level grappler, I don't know if she finds herself in a position where she's finished there. So goes to the judges' scorecards. You might be at the edge of your seat as you're waiting to cash in on that Miranda Maverick ticket. We got the big boys throwing down up in the heavyweight division. We have Mohammed Usman taking on Thomas Petersen. Both men come into this fight off a loss, so I do expect things to be spiced up in there. I expect to see a fire lit underneath both men. Thomas Petersen has a tad bit of an advantage as far as his last opponent went. He took that loss to Jamal Pogues, and I believe Jamal Pogues is a very similar fighter to Mohammed Usman. They fight with similar tactics. They look to stuff takedowns to kind of outvolume you and outstrike you on the feet. And that's exactly what Jamal Pogues was able to do against Thomas Petersen. As far as Thomas Petersen goes, he has that wrestling background, right? He wrestled at North Dakota State, so he has a decent wrestling pedigree as he came into MMA. Mohammed Usman, we know that he wrestled a bit, not on a major scene, but he has that a little bit of a wrestling background. He's more of an athlete. I believe he played football too. Kamaru Usman, his brother, a polished wrestler. I mean, he's not a stranger to fighting a fighter that has wrestling abilities. But when you really look at his resume, especially in the octagon, he hasn't really been battle tested against fighters that could threaten him with wrestling. So that's something that we're going to see play out a little bit here. Mohammed Usman comes into this fight off a loss against Michael Parkin. I believe that Michael Parkin is a better version and a little bit more of a well-rounded fighter than a Thomas Petersen. So take that for what you will, because that fight actually played out decently close. Okay, and I know that for a fact because I had an official play on Mick Parkin, and I was sweating a bit. And Mohammed Usman did win one of those 3 rounds. All in all, Parkin did deserve to get the nod there, but I was impressed with Usman. Man, Usman's not a bad fighter. He's a big athlete. He does some things well, and one thing that I believe that he has going for him in this matchup is he'll have the volume edge. I believe that he'll be the fighter pushing the pace on the feet, and if Thomas Petersen struggles to get takedowns and work some type of grappling into this fight, I favor this fight going towards Mohammed Usman's way for sure. Now, that being said, Thomas Petersen has this kind of like lethargic southpaw type of striking, and I do believe there is some power there. I would not be shocked if he caught Usman with the strike, because Usman does have deficiencies defensively with his striking. So I want to throw that out there. But all in all, if Petersen is going to have success in this fight, I think that he really needs to have success with his wrestling, and I want to see him using his wrestling more so than he did in the last fight. I know he was having some takedown stuffed against Pogues, but I really didn't feel that he continued to press with the wrestling. It's like he almost gave in and was accepting that he wasn't going to get them, which I was a little surprised. I would like to see him have more of like a Dagestani type of grappling attack, like a Khabib style, where he's relentless and just continues to chain those takedown attempts, where I do believe he can eventually get one on Usman. If he does that, he'll be live to maybe cinch up a sub. We've seen Usman sub before. If you remember, he was submitted by Brandon Sales over in the PFL. I believe he was caught. Yeah, he was caught in a rear naked choke there. So, if he's going to have success, I just want to reiterate once again, Petersen, I do believe he has to have success with that wrestling, and that is a realistic possibility that he will have success there. But all in all, Mohammed Usman is a big-time athlete. He's a solid dude. I know he's 35 years old, but that's just, he's cruising into his prime as far as this division goes. You know, he's always getting very solid training over at Team Killcliff FC. He surrounds himself with great people. And I think that with his footwork and his athleticism, he'll be able to avoid some of those takedown attempts. And I think that he will outvolume Thomas Petersen. I just was not impressed with Thomas Petersen's last fight, where he took that loss to Jamal Pogues. I felt like he was in cruise control when he was in the cage, and I really didn't. I didn't enjoy that performance, to say the least. We also saw him knocked out by Waldo Cortez Acosta back in 2022. That was over in LFA, over at LFA 129, and we'll see how he likes being tagged by Usman. Usman has some underrated power. Good volume, but he does have underrated power as well. So keep an eye on that. I will be siding with Mohammed Usman to win this fight. I think there's a possibility he can clip Petersen with the strike, but I'm going to say he wins a decision, has the volume advantage throughout this fight. It's the better athlete. And Thomas Petersen will continue he'll need to continue to work on things. And I think Thomas Petersen needs to take the game a little bit more serious. Maybe I'm off on this, but he comes in a little pudgy. I think that he could diet better, train better. He has the wrestling background. He has some skill sets that will benefit him to have success in this division. But I need to see a little more killer instinct from him when he's in the cage. And I need to see some signs that he's really taking care of himself and really taking the sport serious. Maybe I'm off on that, but that's kind of what I'm smelling in regards to Thomas Petersen. So give me Mohammed Usman, a fighter that I know is always very hungry to go in there and to get the job done. I just want to circle back real quick before we get to the line. Even remember that last fight that he had against McParkin, even though he came up a little bit short, he was a dog in that fight. He was continuously pressing and he was hungry to get that W. He just came up a little bit short. And McParkin is a very, very talented fighter. Okay, so Mohammed Usman opened up as a -145 on BetUS. Did dip down to a -160, but it's back to where it opened up at -145. I don't really have a problem with that -145 line, but I say once you start creeping up to -160, and if we saw this line really start to trend that way, I would stay away from it. I have no problem with like 150, 145 and down. But even there, I'm not necessarily sure this is a target for me or a fight that I'm feeling really confident in. This isn't a very confident pick because remember what we talked about when we started this fight off. Both of these fighters are very hungry. Petersen may come into this fight very, very hungry, and we see a little bit more drive behind him, and he has those wrestling skills, and we haven't seen Usman really, really tested against wrestlers in the octagon. So just keep an eye on that. Maybe we see Usman on his back, and he looks like a fish out of water. That's something to keep an eye on. So with that being said, though, I am on Mohammed Usman to win a decision with the volume. To the flyweight division, we have the return of the Bulldog Bruno Silva. Of course, this is the flyweight Bruno Silva, not the middleweight Bruno Silva. That would be tough for Cody Durden if he was taking on the middleweight Bruno Silva. But Cody Durden still ranked. He's the number 14th ranked flyweight fighter. He comes in off a tough loss against Tager Ulanbekov, where he was subbed. And that's been a little bit of an issue for him, right? He's been subbed in 4 of his 5 losses. But just note, he had moments in that fight. He was showcasing his striking skills and some of the things that he does well in the cage, even against a high-level fighter like Tager Ulanbekov. Ulanbekov, a common opponent, as Ulanbekov also has a victory against Bruno Silva, but that fight did go to a decision. Now, they also have a common opponent in JP Bays. Both men were able to starch JP Bays, or were able to knock him out. Who hasn't knocked out JP Bays? That chain of events all started with his old lady, Cheyenne Vlismus. When she knocked him out, the ball just continued to snowball there. But now check this out. Bruno Silva, he hasn't fought in about a year and 3 months, but he does still come into this fight on a 3-fight winning streak, finishing all 3 of those fights. His last victory was against Tyson Nam, where he eventually did get that sub, but remember, he landed a nasty front kick. So in that fight, he was showcasing some of the striking skills he possesses and the grappling skills. He has solid wrestling. He's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, powerful striking. And I think that it's warranted if you're questioning the fact that he's been very inactive, especially in a matchup like this against Cody Durden and a fighter that's been so active. But I'm not as concerned as some of you guys. One thing that I do like is that he is glued to the hip of Henry Cejudo. He's been training with him for quite a while now over at Team Fight Ready. And you guys know Henry Cejudo, Triple C, a double champion in the UFC, an Olympic gold medalist. I mean, he's a serious athlete, and this guy takes the game very serious. And Bruno Silva's been in the gym at least for a while now. I mean, these guys are in the hot tub together. Okay, I mean, when you surround yourself with a guy like Henry Cejudo, I think that says a lot about who you are as a fighter. So I do expect Bruno Silva to pick right back up. He's a very aggressive fighter. I don't think there'll be that much ring rust here. I think he'll march forward. He'll look to land some big shots. And this is a fight that's going to play out in exciting fashion because Cody Durden will be there willing to meet him. One thing that leans me towards Bruno Silva's way is he's a very accurate striker. He's a clutch performer. And sometimes in those big fights for Cody Durden, he just seems to kind of slip on a banana peel. He kind of slips up and makes some mistakes, and he falls short and he gets finished. And I think there's a possibility that Bruno Silva can finish him in this fight. Just to kind of highlight some of those performances I'm talking about. Not to look down upon Cody Durden because he's a good fighter, but that Ulanbekov fight that we just talked about, the Muhammad Makhachev fight, the way he was hit with that flying knee and just subbed in under a minute. I mean, that really was a letdown. The Jimmy Flick fight where he was subbed in the first round there, that's a fight where, I mean, it wasn't a good look for him. And I wouldn't be shocked if something plays out like that where Bruno Silva comes in very confident, marches forward, and looks to land a big shot or looks to shake things up, and he hurts Durden, and maybe he finishes him up because Bruno Silva is a fight finisher. Okay, you take a look at his 13 victories. Now we don't have 6 of them documented, but the ones that are documented, the big highlight fights. I mean, he's finished 6 out of those 8 fights. So I mean, he is a fight finisher. There's no question. I'm sure he finished up all those unknown type of victories, which probably took place on the regional scene in Brazil early on. He probably starched those dudes, but. I like Bruno Silva. You guys know I've been raving about him for a while. I wish he would just stay active, and I'm hoping that he gets a victory here and then starts to stay active and make some noise in this division. I will side with Bruno Silva to get the job done, and I'm actually going to say that he gets a submission victory. He may crack Durden and hurt him standing and then set up that sub like that, or maybe he even goes to the wrestling, and I know Cody Durden has wrestling skills as well. I do understand that, and I understand that Cody Durden is a very refined fighter. He's a very polished fighter. Kicked his training off up in Georgia at American Top Team up there in Atlanta, I believe. And he's worked his way down to Coconut Creek, and he's been training over at the headquarters of American Top Team, which you guys hear me talk about all the time. I grew up right across the street there, but he's been over there for a while now. He's been being coached by Mike Brown, who's one of the best coaches in the game. So I understand that he's constantly getting better and he's being trained by some of the best in the world. But I still think when push comes to shove, I'm going to side with Bruno Silva being just a little bit more of a clutch fighter. And I think that he could actually even get the better of some of those grappling exchanges. So we'll see there. Durden has that wrestling, but his overall MMA grappling lacks at times. I mean, he's good. He's high level, but he lacks at times. He makes some mistakes down on the mat. He gets subbed. I think that Bruno Silva rises to the occasion. Give me the Bulldog to return to the cage after a long layoff and to go out there and to get a finish over Cody Durden, which could potentially put him into the top 15. And then we could be looking at some big fights for Bruno Silva after that. Let's take a look at the betting line here. Bruno is going to be the dog here. It's only fitting that the Bulldog is the underdog. He opened up at plus 110 on Bet US. Did go down to pick 'em odds there for a second at minus 115. Now it's back up to plus 100. Flat even odds. He's a very minuscule underdog. I think there's more value on him, especially with the plus sign next to his name. There's some question marks in regards to this fight, but I'm going to say that Bruno Silva picks right back up right off that last performance there when he's in the cage. I don't think that he'll be too sluggish in there. And this is a close fight, but I do like the plus odds next to Bruno Silva's name. I say he finishes the fight as well. In the women's bantamweight division, we have Luana Carolina taking on Lucie Pudilová. Now, this is a fight that should play out very closely. Okay, I'm going to let you guys know right off the rip. This fight screams split decision to me. I could see this fight going either way. Some things I do like about being on the Luana Carolina side is I really enjoyed her last fight. And I know some of you guys are probably smirking as I say that, but I mean, I had an official play on it. I understand it was sloppy and it was ugly at times. She was taking on Georgia Storlienko, which I was so shocked to see so many of you guys picking it and being on her on that spot. I don't know who you guys think Storlienko is. You guys need me to remind you who she is. I mean, she's a fighter that has some jiu-jitsu skills, but she's atrocious. At least Luana Carolina is a scrappy type of fighter. She's rangy. She had some performances throughout her career. She's had some where she's overperformed. I mean, I like that victory that she had over Lupe Godinez. I know Godinez took that fight on short notice and was up a weight class, but still, Godinez is an absolute beast. And I know she's had some major letdown spots where she's been finished, like against Molly McCann on a major stage there. Got hit with that spinning back elbow. But she's performed well, man. She's coming into this fight on a 2-fight winning streak. She had that victory over Poliana Botello back in the day. If she doesn't get finished, like she was caught in a knee bar by Lipsky or knocked out by McCann, she does pretty well in those close fights. All right, she's getting her hand raised the majority of the time. Well, on the other hand, in the octagon, I don't think you could say the same thing for Lucie Pudilová. She loses a lot of closer fights, and she's a decent fighter. She fought with the UFC a while ago. She was let go, had some victories over in Europe. She made her way back, but she's on a 2-fight losing streak. And if she loses this fight, that's something that you could say that's good for her. If she loses this fight, she's most likely going to be cut. So she has a fire lit under her here. I think she'll be very motivated. And no, guys, I'm sorry, this isn't Lucie Pudilová here. This is her over here. So you guys turn your head this way. But the thing is even with that fire lit under her, it's not enough for me to side with her here. I do understand that she's still 30 years old and there's a lot of room for growth. She has decent kickboxing, decent grappling skills. She's a well-rounded fighter. But I think that Luana Carolina will get the better of this overall scrap. And that's what I think this fight's going to be. I think it's going to be a scrap, a little bit of a sloppy type of scrap. And I think that Carolina will get the better in that type of fight. So I will pick Dread Luana Carolina to get the job done. I'll say she wins a split decision. Lucie will be devastated to lose another split decision, which will potentially be the end of her UFC career. So, I mean, a lot on the line here. I know some of us don't really think about that at times. We kind of just analyze these fights quickly, and maybe we're not so entertained by this fight, or we're ready to look past this one and on to the next one. But do understand, I mean, this is a huge fight for a fighter in Lucie Pudilová, and it's a huge fight for Luana Carolina too. If she's able to get the job done here, she will be on a 3-fight winning streak. Remember, she shut down Ivana Petrovic in Petrovic's UFC debut. Petrovic was undefeated at the time. Luana has rose to the occasion at times. Obviously, the Molly McCann fight, she fell flat on her face, but she's rose more than she's fell flat on her face, in my opinion. Gimme Luana Carolina to get the job done via split decision. She opened up as a slight dog at plus 100 on BetUS, and now she is a minus 110. She's still technically an underdog, but this is a pick'em fight, and I like Luana Carolina. If Luana blossomed up to like a minus 120, or if she's any type of favorite, I wouldn't want to touch that, or I wouldn't recommend you guys do that. But in this spot here, I would say you're better off taking the underdog, quite simply, but you'd rather be on Carolina, in my opinion.
Michael Vick here at BetUS.com. Get it all. Huge bonuses, great odds, a race book, live in-game betting, and a casino. BetUS, my online sports book and casino.
Would you look who it is? Brian Kelleher. Look where we're at now. Your UFC career is on the line. The teller's giving you the evil eye. Now check this out, guys. I'm really getting a kick out of this, man. This is happening live as I'm recording this. I mean, this is the real deal. I was just dying laughing over here. I went to pull up Brian Kelleher's Instagram, and he did indeed block me. All right, sorry, this page is not available. I even double checked it. You guys could check it. The Instagram he has is still up. So that means that I guess he caught wind of the whole Teller versus Kelleher saga. So, you know, you guys know, even though I'm saying this and that, obviously, for those of you guys that know me, man, I'm having fun with this and I'm kind of joking and whatnot. So, but I do find it funny that it got back to him and that he blocked me there. I would love to have seen his face as he was watching whatever video he was watching of me that got him to finally make that move there. But look where we're at now. I'm giving him the evil eye. And this, in my opinion, really is going to be the last time we see him fighting in the UFC. Now, if you guys don't know what happened, again, like I said earlier, just hit the comment section up below, because Kelleher did me dirty back in the day. He did me dirty with the MMA live discussion. I was doing those live interviews, which, by the way, I'm about to do a whole new season of that, and it's going to be way better than it was in the past. Like I've been telling you guys, I'm going to be doing a lot more live content. I'm going to have a lot of fighters here on the channel. We're going to be doing fight companions with the fighters and whatnot. A lot more exciting type of content coming your guys' way with the fighters. But remember, I was just getting my feet wet, learning this whole YouTube thing, and nice to bring the fighters on. And I don't know why Kelleher did me like he did me, but it was weird. But again, this is going to be the end of Kelleher. We're not going to be talking about him no more, because I'm not doing breakdowns of him over in, not to throw shade at any smaller time promotions. I don't even know if he'll be fighting in them. Maybe he just retires. He's 37, but I won't be doing predictions of his fights that are taking place over at Titan FC or LFA, if he's even able to get on a card like that. So, Cody Gibson, in my opinion, is an underrated fighter, man. He's a scrappy dude. He's up there in age like Kelleher, but I think he still has a lot more left to give the game, or at least he has enough to give to the game in this spot here. Cody Gibson, a very well-rounded fighter. He could scrap with you on the feet. He has jiu-jitsu skills. He looked very good on The Ultimate Fighter. If you guys remember, Tough 31, had 2 finishes on the show. Eventually did fall short in the finale against Brad Katona, but Brad Katona, a 2-time Ultimate Fighter winner. He's a good fighter. Love him or hate him, Katona's a good fighter. And then the next fight that he had against Miles Johns, you guys know Miles Johns was an official play me in his last fight. Miles Johns is a fighter that we're high on. Miles Johns is not an easy outing for anybody. Okay, so 2 losses in a row, but I think that he'll rise back up to the occasion. He'll be able to handle Kelleher. One thing I love for him in this spot is that he's going to have a 5-inch reach advantage. He's 4 inches taller. He'll be much more rangy. I think he'll be able to have a lot of success from the outside. And Kelleher, I know that Kelleher comes into this fight on a 3-fight losing streak, and they're against high-level competition. But the Cody Garbrandt one, the last one, that's where you saw Kelleher really not looking good in the cage, man. I mean, the way he was caught with the strike there, the way he just fell flat on his face, that just wasn't a good look for him. And I think that he's not going to like the pressure and activity that the Renegade's going to be throwing on him or throwing his way. And I think that there's a possibility that Gibson gets a finish here, right? Gibson's a fighter that has 6 knockouts, 6 subs. Like I said, very well-rounded. 12 of his 19 victories are by way of finish. And Kelleher is a fighter. When he falls short, he does tend to be finished. He's been subbed 7 times. He's coming off a knockout loss. Give me Cody Gibson to get a finish in this fight. I'm not going to give you knockout or sub. I'm going to tell you that Cody Gibson finishes this fight because I think he could do it in a variety of ways. And he puts the stamp on it. And maybe I'll go live on IG on at MMA Fortune Teller _. Maybe I'll go live on the IG as we put an end to Kelleher's UFC career there. We'll have some fun there. And as we start to creep up to the Fight Companion, you guys know we'll be talking about that fight on the Fight Companion. That's going to be a fun one, guys. All right, let's go pull up the betting line on this fight. And just to play devil's advocate, of course, we got to turn every stone over here. Do understand that Kelleher does possess some power at times. He has a nasty guillotine. It's not as good as the Teller team that I possess there. It's decent though. Brian Kelleher is a plus 200 right now. Opened up as a plus 200 on BetUS. This had to have been a mistake. Somehow he was a minus 255. I don't know what's going on there. Back to a plus 200. Imagine that Cody Gibson would have been. Let's double check that real quick because that would have been an error that you could have. Yeah, you could have grabbed Cody Gibson at a plus 205. There was a mistake there that lasted for a little bit, but Cody Gibson's a hefty favorite here. He's a minus 250, and I'm going to say, listen, I got to keep it professional with you guys. I mean, I don't say there's a lot of value on a line like that next to Cody Gibson. Same. I like him to go out there and get the job done. It's a fun fight for us, but minus 250 is not a line that I would be targeting. You guys know I want to give you professional advice as far as that goes too. We're having fun, but that's too high of a line. And Kelleher has been losing to higher level fighters. So just maybe he's very hungry. He has his back up against the wall. Anytime a fighter has his back up against the wall, you have to be wary there too. But Cody Gibson has his back up against the wall as well. He needs a win here. Give me Cody Gibson to get that finish. This fight right here in the featherweight division is one of my most anticipated fights on this card. It has all the makings to be a barn burner type of affair. Hyder Amil taking on Yeong Lee. Both these fighters have had some solid success in the UFC recently. Hyder Amil just was victorious in his UFC debut, and I understand it was against a lower level fighter in Fernie Garcia, and I understand that Fernie Garcia was taking that fight on like 8 days short notice, as Amil was supposed to be taking on Melsek Bagdasaryan originally, which would have been a much more formidable opponent. But the way that Amil went out there and the way he went out there and broke Fernie Garcia down, he showed that he's an absolute dog, and it has made me very eager to see him step down in the octagon once again. So I am anticipating his performance on the night this upcoming Saturday. Remember now, he had a victory on Dana White's Contender Series against the Turkish fighter Sonmez, had that decision victory there, but it really was the Fernie Garcia victory that was his coming out party, in my opinion. He's still undefeated. He's not a younger fighter, though. He's 34 years old, so his time is now. He's a fighter that has been training with Gilbert Melendez for a long time, right? You could say he's a protege of Gilbert Melendez. For all you newer fans to the fight game, Gilbert Melendez, the longtime Strikeforce lightweight champion of the world, fighter that was part of the Rat Pack, or whatever you want to call them, part of that pack with the Diaz brothers and Jake Shields, the Scrap Pack. See, I knew there was something to that part of I think it was the Scrap Pack. But Gilbert Melendez had that wrestling pedigree always when he was in the cage, but he had good boxing skills too. A very well-rounded fighter who is a good coach and a good fighter to learn from. So I think that we're starting to see that Hyder Amil is a well-rounded fighter. He's a tough, durable dude, fights out of the southpaw stance. He'll look to pressure you. And then on the other hand, we have the Korean Tiger, Yeong Lee, who impressed me very much so in his last fight against Blake Builder. He showcased that he's a very well-rounded fighter, solid takedown defense. He's not a fighter that you're going to just rip down to the mat and work your ground and pound against. Okay, if you have solid wrestling skills and you're coming in against him, it's still not going to be easy to get him down. And the things I like about Yeong Lee is that he has great volume. He has a solid frame for this weight class. And I think that he's going to give a lot of fighters problems. I think he's going to solidify himself as a fighter in this division moving forward. It's the activity, it's the accuracy and his striking. Okay, he's a precision striker. He's not necessarily a one-shot knockout type of fighter, but he can really push the pace on you and hurt you with volume. And he picks his spots nicely. He'll work the body. He'll hurt you to the body. He'll start to raise those strikes up, start to look for some shots on the chin. I like what I've seen from him. And you also have to like the fact that he's training over at Team Fight Ready MMA with, of course, led by Henry Cejudo. And we talked earlier about another fighter and Bruno Silva, who's fighting on this card. So I'm willing to bet there was a huge buzz going on into that gym leading up to this fight card. Now, as impressed as I was with Amil in that last fight, I've been a little bit more impressed with the Jeong Lee. I believe he has the higher ceiling. And as far as how the fight plays out, I just think that Jeong Lee will be able to keep this fight standing. And I think that he'll use his length and his quickness and activity on the feet to outpoint Hyder Amil. Amil may look to kind of counter him with a big strike, and I think he will be marching forward. But Jeong Lee will be the fighter leading the dance. I think he could use his footwork to circle and just outstrike Amil. I could see him countering with some solid body kicks. If Amil tries to press up against the cage, we've seen that Lee knows how to work off the cage with his strikes. And that last fight landed a devastating knee as they were breaking off from the cage. And I see Lee landing those more damaging shots that will look good for the judges' scorecards. And all in all, I think that Jeong Lee is going to win a decision here. It's hard to say that Lee's going to go out there and get a finish because Amil, not only has he never been finished, he's never lost a fight, but he seems to be a very tough dude. And Jeong Lee doesn't have a long track record of fighting high-level fighters, right? He's worked his way into the UFC from the road to UFC. And if you want to talk about the one loss that is involved with either fighters, there's only been one loss. That was back in 2017 when he was on the road to UFC. Back then, he's been fighting for a long time in the road to UFC. In fact, all of his fights were under the road to UFC as he worked his way into the UFC. And I'll also just note, he did take a loss back in 2017 against a low-level fighter in Yeong Kim. I mean, that was a little bit of an alarming loss. But since then, he's really seemed to refine his skill set, and he's elevated his game to another level. So the fighter that I'm seeing in the cage as of recently against Yi Za and Blake Builder, although I'm not extremely high on both those men, I could see Lee continuing to do what he's doing against those lower level fighters, up a step as he elevates the level of competition. I think that the skill sets he possesses, I think he'll be able to continue to implement them, even at that, just at least against a fighter in Amil. So I'm on Jeong Lee to win a decision here. Let's go take a look at the betting line and see what we're talking about. Jeong Lee is a minus 190 on BetUS. Now, what's interesting is he did open up as a minus 260. He opened up as a big time favorite. He's still a pretty big favorite though. He's almost a 2-1 favorite, but I understand why that line came down. Okay. What we were just talking about. He's not really battle tested throughout his career. And I think that people are still not exactly sure who Hyder Amil is as he starts to elevate the level of opponent as well, right? We haven't seen him fight a lot of high level fighters, and we'll see how he looks as he continues to go up the ladder. And if you were able to grab Hyder at plus 210, I do believe there was some value there. As far as at plus 160, I mean, you lost a lot of value, but even then, I would still say if I have to choose one way or another here, I would still say there's a little bit more value on where the line is on Hyder still even now. So that line may even continue to come down. I don't think I want to target Jeong Lee even at a minus 190 just because Hyder's a tough outing and this fight may play out closer. But all in all, I do think Jeong Lee will be the fighter that gets his hand raised via decision. Keep an eye on the activity of him with his striking, and keep an eye on him with his takedown defense, working against the cage and keeping Hyder from getting him down to the mat. Over to the lightweight division, we got Loik Radzhabov taking on Trey Ogden. This is a high-level fight here. Both fighters nearing their mid-30s. These guys have been cutting their teeth outside the UFC for some time. Of course, Loik over in the PFL had a lot of success out there. Trey fighting over in LFA, had a stint in Bellator, I believe, for a little bit, but fought in multiple well-known promotions on the regional scene, and he's really peaking as a fighter as he's getting up there in age. So, I mean, I've been quite interested in what he's been doing as of recently, not just in the cage, but he's been coaching as well, having a lot of success coaching some of the best fighters in the game right now. He kind of took over that scene in the region where he's at, right? If you remember, James Krause had Glory MMA Fitness going on. Of course, that whole thing burned down, and in stepped Trey Ogden. I really believe he kind of took over that role over there, and really took over that role in the mixed martial arts game as the fighter, or as a fighter that's fighting at a very high level, but also training at a very high level. You don't see a lot of dudes doing that, and Trey is doing that. I know he was a little bit down on himself for Garrett Armfield's performance, or I shouldn't say it like that. He was just a little bit down that Garrett Armfield didn't come through in that fight. I know that's one fighter he's been putting in a lot of work and had a nice heartfelt message there on IG. But Trey is a fighter. If you ask me, he's not really a stud athlete. I mean, of course, he's a solid athlete. He's in the UFC, but he's not a fighter that stands out with his athleticism compared to the rest of the fighters on the roster. In my opinion, he's a fighter that has very high fight IQ, and he pays attention to the little details, and that's why he's been having a lot of success as of recently. He has one of the better jabs in the game. He really pumps the jab and works off that jab and sets up other things. He's a solid grappler. He's a fighter that could definitely finish you down on the mat. 10 submission victories out of his 17 victories. If you're slacking there, he will get you down there and he will finish you. And even as of recently, we've been seeing he can control you down there. He could rain down ground and pound. You take a look at some of the recent work that he's been putting in. Remember now, the Nicholas Mota that was overturned to a no contest, but that was a finish. Okay, he was finishing that fight at the very end of the third round, and the referee stopped it prematurely, or you could say, or whatnot. But he was on way to finishing that fight. Really dominated Nicholas Mota there. And Mota is a fighter that bounced back with another solid victory over Tom Nolan, who looked good again. After that loss, Tom Nolan bounced back with a big victory, if you want to work the chain of events there. But I think Mota is not a bad fighter. That was a big performance there. What he just did to Kurt Holobaugh, dominating that fight, looked good. Did have the loss to Ignacio Bahamendez, which is one of the top young fighters in the game right now. And then before that, had a victory over Daniel Zuliber, who is one of the top young fighters in the game. So, I mean, I think he's looked very good after that loss that he had against Jordan Levitt, which was a very close fight. Since that loss, I think he's really proving to be a solid fighter in this division that can hand anybody a loss, hand a lot of people a loss. Let's just say that if they're not on their P's and Q's, even high level fighters like Loik Radzhabov, which Radzhabov is going to be the more explosive fighter here. You'll see him throw spinning attacks on the feet. He may be more live to land that explosive knockout, and he could grapple. He could do a little bit of it all as well. He's a well-rounded fighter. He's been training over at Team Killcliff FC, surrounding himself with high-level fighters. I don't want to necessarily say that he has bad cardio, because I don't think that's the case. But I will say that Ogden has better cardio, and as the fight progresses, I think Ogden will look sharper and better the later the fight goes. You think about that Esteban Ribovics fight. He did slow down a little bit there, but I do believe he took that fight on short notice, if I remember correctly. And, since that performance where people were a little bit down on him, but I think since then people understand Esteban Ribovics is a fighter that is high level, right? He just had another huge victory, did Ribovics, right? He just knocked out Terrence McKinney in devastating fashion, one of the nastiest knockouts we've seen, had a victory over Carmelo Kirk before that. So we're understanding that he's a high level fighter, and Loik did give him his, excuse me here, let me just clarify that. He did give him his lone loss. Okay, he's undefeated besides that fight there. So that's a good victory. He did get knocked out by Mateus Rebecki, and Rebecki is a high-level fighter, so don't put him under the fire too much for that. And he bounced back with a huge victory over Abdul Karim El Sawadi, which Loik was the underdog, if I remember correctly. He was the underdog in that spot. Landed a huge knockout there, and he got a lot of that momentum back behind him. And he obviously still has a lot more to offer the game at 33 years old. So this is a huge fight for both men. The winner of this is really going to be making some noise in the lightweight division. And, I'm siding with Trey here. I am siding with Trey Ogden. I think that his high fight IQ, his cardio, the pace he'll push, and he's very measured defensively. I think that those will be things that will lead him to get his hand raised here. I think that he can avoid the big strikes of Loik, and I think that as he continues to push the pace, his work ethic, his cardio, and again, I'll say it one more time, that high fight IQ working all behind that jab will lead him to get a victory here. I think that he will win a decision. I'm not necessarily banking on him getting a finish here. Loik is a fighter that is very hard to finish. He's only been finished once throughout his career. Out of 5 losses, he's been finished once. And we could just run that back real quick. He was finished again by Mateusz Rebecki, which was just 2 fights ago for him. So that's something to keep an eye on. But at the same time, I think overall he's shown to be a very durable fighter. He's very battle tested too. Fighting over in PFL, he's fought high level fighters throughout his career. I mean, he's been in there with the Alex Martinez. He's been in there with him a couple times. Nathan Schultz, Chris Wade, Rashid Magomedov, who's not a bad fighter. Also, he's been in there with Raush Manfio, who's a good fighter. He's been in there with good fighters over in the PFL. He's a legit fighter. He looks for more of those explosive type of strikes. He's well-rounded, but I think that Trey Ogden will pump that jab, will work the volume, and it's kind of hard to like put your finger on what Trey does so good. I kind of been chalking it up to that high fight IQ and paying attention to the small details, but Trey is one of those types of fighters as of recently. He's moving in there on a different page than his opposition, man. His footwork is good, and he's the fighter that's taking control of the fights, and I think that he will get the better of Loik, and he is an underdog. Okay, we'll get over to the betting line right now. He is an underdog. He is currently a plus 115 underdog. He opened up as a plus 20, so very slight movement coming his way, but the line trending towards what we're talking about here. I wouldn't be surprised if this fight closer to pick 'em odds by the time these two men step into the cage. When they see Trey facing off with Loik and just see that length advantage that he has, he comes in with the solid physique, and just the more they rewatch his tape, they see the work that he's putting in the cage, the pace that he's pushing. I think people are going to start to like him in this spot, and I think that line will close a little bit. One other thing too is Trey has never been knocked out before. I already talked about how he's very technically sound defensively, but he has a chin. He's not easy to finish there. So as the pace picks up, you really can't just bank on Loik landing a knockout, which is something that he's done often in his victories. Trey has been subbed more than you would expect. He's been subbed in half of his losses, which is a little bit surprising because he's a high-level grappler. But Loik is a fighter that doesn't have very many subs. 3 subs out of 18 victories. Not a lot of big-time submissions that stand out to me there. And I think that this fight will go to a decision, and I favor Trey in that type of situation. I think the value is on Trey with the plus sign next to his name. Trey Ogden to win this fight. I'm going to say unanimous decision for Trey. In the featherweight division, we got the mean machine, Steve Garcia, taking on Seung Choi, another Korean fighter on this card. If you guys have been taking note, there's quite a few Korean fighters on this card. We still even have some more to talk about here. Steve Garcia, though, comes into this fight with a lot of momentum. He's on a 3-fight winning streak. And besides that, he's been finishing everybody, not even including the 3 victories he's coming in off of. If you want to scroll back to even the victories that he had before the losses that are intertwined with his victories, I mean, this dude has just been finishing everybody that he's in there with. So he's on, as far as his victories go, he's finished 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, 7 of his 7 last victories, all coming by way of knockout. Okay, he's been going in there, just putting in solid work. Of course, as of recently, knockouts over Mel Costa, who just bounced back with the victory. Knockout over Shayla Norden-Beck. Knocked out Chase Hooper in devastating fashion. Now, he was knocked out by Hayasar Mahashate. Just need to note, that was an underdog play of mine that we cashed in on. But before that, knocked out Charlie Ontiveros. So, I mean, he's dangerous, man. Even the knockout he had over Chipe Mariscal, who's proven to be a solid UFC fighter. Steve Garcia carries some serious power in his hands. The long-time Jackson Wink product. I'll be the first to admit, I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I kind of apologize. I kind of have talked about Steve Garcia here on the mic in disrespectful fashion. I kind of thought that he wasn't a UFC caliber fighter. That's kind of what I'm pointing to. I've said that before. I really didn't think Steve Garcia was going to be a guy that even hung around in the UFC, and he completely proved me wrong. I mean, this guy, not only is he getting wins in the UFC, this is a fighter that has now proven to go out there in the octagon and look to put on a show for the fans. He goes out there and looks to get finishes and with that being the case, I think he's a fighter that isn't going anywhere anytime soon. He's 32 years old. He's coming into this fight with a lot of confidence. I think you guys know which way I'm going with my pick here. I'm giving you guys a sneak peek already. I'll just quickly go over Seung Choi. Seung Choi is a dangerous fighter in his own right. Okay, he goes out there and he looks to land big shots. We saw him knock out Julian Erosa early in their fight. He had the majority of his knockouts, though. The majority of his finishes were before entering the UFC. In the UFC, he's had a couple, but some of his bigger victories were decision victories, like the Yusuf Zalal victory. He's coming off a victory over Jarno Arens, who's not a bad fighter. He's a lengthy kickboxing type of fighter, has that Taekwondo style, very light on his feet. He is dangerous, though. But this is a matchup where I really do expect both guys to throw down on the feet. I think this is a kickboxing type of match. And I love the confidence that Steve Garcia is coming into this fight with. That mixed with the fact that Seung Choi is a fighter that is vulnerable to being finished, okay? And not just via knockout. He's a fighter that gets hurt and gets subbed as well. He kind of, I don't know if I want to say he fades in his fights, but if you guys know what I'm talking about. There's been a couple performances by Seung Choi where he starts off hot, and he kind of does wilt in there a little bit, and he's been finished in those types of fights too, where he started off hot and then he broke down and was finished. I just think that Steve Garcia is going to be in his face, slinging heavy hands towards his face, and I think that this is a fight where we could easily see a knockout in. I'm taking Steve Garcia to win this fight and to get a knockout in this fight. All right, so give me Steve Garcia via knockout. All right, and let's go check the line on this fight. Right now on BetUS, Steve Garcia is a minus 135. He opened up as a minus 142, but he is indeed a minus 135. And you guys, we check out BetUS right now. You guys can go sign up to BetUS and go lock this bet in right now if you like it. If you do that, don't forget, guys, please sign up through the link that's in the description of this video and let me know if you do that so I can give you guys an additional gift. But Steve Garcia, just a minus 135. I think there's some value next to his name there. Choi's dangerous, but he's shown durability issues, and Steve Garcia, for the most part, has been a durable fighter. I know he's been cracked in that recent fight against Maashate, but Garcia is the fighter I expect to get that knockout if we do see that play out in the cage. Give me Steve Garcia via KO. We got two 55ers ready to scrap it out here. We got the veteran Kurt Holobaugh taking on Kainan Kruszewski. How about that last name Kruszewski for the Brazilian? Catching me a little bit off guard there, right? What's the last name that you would have been expecting more so? I was thinking maybe a Kainan Silva. Nah, I wasn't expecting Kruszewski since he made his debut on Dana White's Contender Series. Seems like some Polish dude snuck his way down to Sao Paulo, snuck his way into the family tree. Again, comment below maybe a name that would have been more fitting than a Kruszewski. I throw Silva out there, so nobody takes Silva, but give me a more common Brazilian last name there. Kainan Kruszewski is coming into this fight off a brutal KO loss. If you guys remember, Elvis Brenner shut his lights out. He hit him with the strike right over the ear, right to the side of the temple, and it just kind of grazed him, but it just hit that button spot and shut him off. You guys know the chin and that temple area there, man. If you're just touched in the right way, it will shut your lights off. So you do have to wonder a little bit about how the brain's feeling for Kainan Kruszewski coming into this fight. Now, that fight took place back in April of 2023. So, it's been a little bit since he's been in there. He's had a decent amount of time to rest the brain up. But Kurt Holobaugh, this is a dude that's not necessarily known for his power, I would say. He's not really known for that one-shot type of power. But he is the type of fighter that will put it on you, man. He'll throw a lot of volume, and he will throw clubbing shots towards your guys' way. When I think about Kurt Holobaugh's fighting style and his fights, maybe it's because some of them were with there wasn't big crowds in there. It was in the Apex and whatnot. He's the type of fighter, or even the Ultimate Fighter. That's what I'm thinking of. The Ultimate Fighter fights that he was participating in, right? The Jason Knight fight. That's the fight that stood out to me. But even before that, he's been that type of fighter where he just puts those clubbing type of shots on you, man. If you start to wilt and you backpedal, he will pressure you and he will club you up. All right, that was a great performance where he got the stoppage on Jason Knight. He brutally finished him there. Submitted Austin Hubbard after that. Now, if you guys remember, if you guys were keeping up with me for those Ultimate Fighter recap fights I was doing, I knew that he was going to make it to the finale. I'll say that much, okay? a little birdie kind of told me, a little birdie was tweeting, I knew Kurt Holobaugh was winning those fights in the show. All right. So when I was watching him fight, it was kind of interesting. I already knew what was going to happen. Now watching him in there against Kainan Khrushchevsky, I do not know he's going to win the fight. And he has a very dangerous man across from him, a very hungry fighter in Kainan Khrushchevsky. And I think that this is going to be a tough fight for Kurt. Kurt has his back up against the wall. He's 37 years old. He's coming into this fight off a loss. Just had that tough loss against Trey Ogden, who we just talked about, who was a high-level fighter. But Kurt spent a lot of time on his back, and he does have a dangerous guard game. He'll attack you off his back and throw elbows up and whatnot. He has a high caliber BJJ game and all that. But so does Kainan Khrushchevsky. He is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. And Khrushchevsky, in my opinion, is the more dangerous striker. I was talking about that knockout loss that he just took, but if you run through his highlight reel on YouTube, he's had some devastating knockout victories as well. There's one that was on UFC Fight Pass on the YouTube channel there, where he landed a nasty knockout loss, and it was tight. It was a nice tight hook. I believe it was under the LFA or Brazil banner. His striking's nasty. Like I said, he's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. I think he could hold his own there. And I'm a Holobaugh fan, but he's getting up there in age, and I think Kainan Khrushchevsky has a little bit more left to give the game, and I think he's a little bit hungrier in this spot. And I like the length that he has. He'll have about a 3-inch reach advantage. He's a little bit more lengthy, and he is a snappy, technical type of striker. And I think he gets the better of Holobaugh here. I don't say it with an overwhelming amount of confidence, but I am going to take Kainan Khrushchevsky to bounce back with the victory coming into this fight coming in off a brutal loss here. I am going to side with him, actually. I'm going to say he bounces back with the victory. He opened up as a -160 on BetUS. He's now right around a -150, which doesn't shock me that line came down a little bit. This is a close fight, and I think maybe the line could even be a little bit closer. I would still even say there's possibly value on Holobaugh where the line's at. I thought this line would be more of like Kainan Khrushchevsky around -135 or something like that. That's where I have it capped at. Maybe I'm nitpicking and it's close to that, but just understand that Holobaugh's tough, and Holobaugh will throw volume towards Kainan's chin. So if he's not rested up and he's not healed up, we may see him wilt once again. But I will say this much just to end my thoughts on this fight. Kainan got caught with a devastating knockout shot against Elvis Brenner. He was just a little bit out of position and put himself in a vulnerable position to be clipped there. But when I break down tape on him, all in all, I would say that he's decently technically sound. He has good footwork and he does keep his hands up high. I will say that he avoids something happening like that again. Especially after that just happening, that he's training his defense very much so over the past year or so. So give me Kainan Khrushchevsky to win a decision. I'm going to say he wins a decision here. Kurt Holobaugh's been very durable and tough, man. 29 pro fights, only been knocked out once. He's very, very tough and durable. I know he's up there in age, but it's hard to bank against Kurt Holobaugh getting finished, even though Khrushchevsky is a danger striker as well. And I know he only has 3 knockout victories, but if you're looking here, but that's not necessarily the case because 8 of his victories are unknown. So like his early fights that were taking place in Brazil against very low-level fighters, they didn't document the method of victory, which I'd be willing to bet all 8 of those are finishes. So you could say he pretty much has like 11 knockout victories out of 15 victories. Just kind of understand that, but Kainan Khrushchevsky to win a decision here.
This video is brought to you by BetUS Sportsbook and Casino.
We got the Korean Superboy, Doo-ho Choi, taking on Senior Perfecto Bill Algeo, fight taking place in the featherweight division. This one should be a fun one here. Doo-ho Choi comes into this fight off a very disappointing draw. If you ask me, that was a fight that he should have had a victory in. If you guys remember, I think it was Chris Tione, who was the ref at the time, took a point away for an accidental headbutt or something like that, if you guys remember. And Doo-ho Choi, even then, still, I think he still should have got the nod, even with the point deduction. It was a little weird, but the judges gave Nelson, 2 of the judges gave Nelson 1 round. So with the point deduction, it ended up being a draw. I believe it was a majority draw. Listen, Kyle Nelson's no slouch either. Kyle Nelson is actually the last fighter who Bill Algeo just fought, and he knocked out Bill Algeo. Okay, just remember that real quick. But just circling back to the Korean Superboy here, that was a fight that he looked very good in, especially when you take into consideration he was coming into that fight off almost a 2-year layoff. Excuse me, not a 2-year layoff. Excuse me there. He was coming into that fight almost off a 4-year layoff. Okay, where the fight before he was knocked out by Charles Jourdain. He was knocked out by Jeremy Stevens before that. And you have to remember, Before those 2 knockout losses, he went to war with Cub Swanson. That fight is in the UFC Hall of Fame. That was a very fun fight back in 2016. So obviously he took a lot of damage in that fight and coincidentally gets knocked out in his next 2 fights. Now, I like the fact that he had that long layoff. I think it wasn't due to the injury. I mean, I know it wasn't due to the injury. I think, in fact, he had a mandatory military service. I believe that's what it was. But I like the fact that of the timing of that layoff, because he came back into that Nelson fight and looked rested up. His brain looked rested up, and he looked sharper than ever. He's a very quick striker. I am a big fan of watching him on the feet. He moves very quickly, great footwork. Bill Algeo is a tricky Muay Thai striker as well, with the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt in his back pocket. Bill Algeo is a good fighter. Bill Algeo is getting up there in age, and he does come into this fight he's coming into this fight off a knockout loss. That's something you have to keep an eye on, because Doo Ho Choi will touch you. I wouldn't be surprised if Doo Ho Choi gets a knockout in the spot. I would not be surprised. Just how we were talking about Doo Ho Choi had back-to-back knockout losses, I wouldn't be surprised if we're talking about Bill Algeo going into his next fight, coming in off 2 knockout losses. Excuse me, guys. The coffee is, it's got me going right now. I just finished the cup, man. I'm all wired up here and trying to keep my energy throughout the end of this breakdown video. But this is a fight where I think that the Korean Superboy can get a knockout. Okay, and that's actually the route I'm going to go. I'm going to say Doo Ho Choi touches him up. It will be competitive as long as the fight lasts, but even if Doo Ho Choi doesn't find that knockout, I think that he could still be up on the scorecards with activity and just crisp strikes being landed, nice calf kicks and leg kicks being landed, setting up the hands. I'm going to take the Korean Superboy to win this fight, and I know he is an underdog. We're going to get to the line here in a second, but I think that Doo Ho Choi will start to get some momentum once again, like he had before falling into the little losing streak that started with the Cub Swanson loss. And if you remember, the Korean Zombie, he stepped away from the cage for a while, had that mandatory military service, and eventually he got the ball rolling late in his career too. I wouldn't be surprised if Doo Ho Choi does that. And I'm on Doo Ho Choi to get the job done, and I think that it's possible that he gets a knockout in this fight. Doo Ho Choi is a plus 130 underdog right now. Opened up as a plus 132, touched 125, back up to 132, or back to 130 right now. But he's a slight underdog. I think there's some value there. I think this is a very close fight. Bill Algeo is a tricky dude, but coming in off that knockout loss, I have no problem being on the Doo Ho Choi side here. I know Doo Ho Choi is very hungry after how that last fight played out. I know he was very frustrated with that. Give me Doo Ho Choi to get a victory here, and I'll say that I got to stick with what I said. I'll say he gets a knockout. Up to the co-main event, Brad Tavares taking on Yeong Park, the Iron Turtle. Both these fighters come in to the cage coming off a loss. And in fact, Brad Tavares comes into this fight off a brutal KO loss by way of Gregory Rodriguez. Before that, he had the victory over Chris Weidman. I thought that he looked very hesitant in that fight, was kind of working the leg kicks from the outside. I thought that he should have had more of a killer instinct in that fight. Chris Weidman was injured. He was wounded in that fight. And I thought that Tavares just looked very hesitant. And ironically enough, he was coming into that fight off that knockout loss against Bruno Silva. Again, we mentioned Bruno Silva earlier. That was the middleweight version of Bruno Silva that knocked out Brad Tavares there. So he was a little hesitant. And the fact that he's been knocked out in 2 of his last 3 fights, he was knocked out in both of his last 2 losses. I think that is a major factor going into this fight. Brad Tavares was a fighter that was pretty durable throughout the early part of his career. And you got to wonder, as he's getting up there in age, now 36, if the game's starting to catch up to him. And that could be a problem too, because Yeong Park is a fighter that will throw a pretty nasty offensive threat towards you. He has good boxing skills. He kind of works off that jab, but he will throw some overhands over the top of that, and he's a dangerous dude. He does have grappling skills as well. You take a look at his last 3 victories, all by way of submission. Okay, so he does have those grappling skills as well, and he also was knocked out against Gregory Rodriguez, a common opponent there, a high-level fighter. When you think about his UFC debut, this was a fight that took place, let's see here, it's not going to show it here, but I do believe it took place in Korea. I think it took place in Korea, that fight card. He made his debut there against Anthony Hernandez, who's one of the dark horses of the division. He's just a stud, man. Anthony Hernandez is hitting on a whole nother level right now. Yeong Park was winning that fight up until the point that he got caught in that sub. I remember very vividly because I had Anthony Hernandez mixed up in some action and I was sweating that out. It was early in the morning, but eventually Anthony Hernandez dug deep and got that finish there, but Jun-Young Park was ahead with the boxing throughout that entire fight. And even after that performance, he went out there, got a victory over Marc-Andre Barriault, John Phillips, Stefan Nchukwi. But we talked about the Gregory Rodriguez loss, and then after that, he's on a 4-fight winning streak, or went on a 4-fight winning streak. Not against the highest level of competition, though, man. Joseph Holmes, he's not him. Denis Tialinen's not him. Albert Duryov and Eric Anders, two tough dudes there. But and then he had the loss to Andre Muniz. So just to kind of keep you guys up to date what's going on with these two dudes, I think that Jun-Young Park is going to be the aggressor in this fight. I think he's going to be the fighter that you can kind of bank on to be marching forward and have a little bit of an edge as far as the volume goes. And we could run the numbers on that as well. Jun-Young Park landing 4.53 strikes per minute in the octagon compared to Tavares' 3.38. Well, also Tavares being on the decline with those numbers as of recently. So even though those 3.38 landed per minute, I think it's even skewed because the fighter that he's been as of recently, he's looking more like a two strikes landed per minute type of dude. Both men defensively sound, not absorbing a lot of strikes. But I favor Park to be the fighter that leads this dance a little bit. I expect to see a timid Tavares. I expect to see a timid Tavares once again. Like I said, he was timid in the Weidman fight coming in off that knockout loss to Bruno Silva. Now he comes into this fight after being knocked out once again against Gregory Rodriguez. He's going to be very shy, man. He's going to be timid, and I don't expect Jun-Young Park to have that type of fighting style. So give me Jun-Young Park. He opened up as a -164 on BetUS. He's now -185. So action coming in on him. I think that's smart action there. I wouldn't be surprised if Park touches -200 by the time this fight takes place. I think we'll see action kind of keep trending in on him. I think people have question marks in regards to Brad Tavares' game right now and to where he's at as a fighter, and it's completely warranted. So give me Jun-Young Park to win this fight. Is he going to get a finish? Give me another finish there. I'm going to say he gets another finish. I think Tavares is a wounded animal right now. And I don't say that one with a lot of confidence. I'll say that it could be a decision victory, but I'll spice things up. Give me Jun-Young Park via TKO, second round TKO. You guys, real quick, I just want to give you all a special thank you for all the support that you guys have given me. It really means a lot to me. As I've been saying, I'm making a big push with the channel. I got these big things I'm working on, and I want to let you guys know how much I appreciate all the support you've given me. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Please like this video. Catch me on all my social media. Go follow me on Instagram and Twitter. It's right below. And I appreciate you guys a lot. And also, if you want to work with me with my official plays, do not hesitate to reach out. I'll give you guys some further information there. Let's go head over to the main event. All right, guys, it's UFC 1. We got Royce Gracie, a.k.a. Virna Jandiroba, taking on Amanda Lemos, a.k.a. Art Jemerson. R.I.P. to Art Jemerson. I do believe he just passed away. But we got the stylistic clash here. The grappler versus striker. Both these fighters ranked very high in the division. Amanda Lemos right now, the number 3 ranked strawweight fighter. Virna, the number 5 ranked strawweight fighter. Virna's coming into this fight with some real momentum behind her. She's getting up there in age, but man, she's doing it like Damian Maia did towards the later half of his career. Still having success with the grappling. The pace that Virna was able to push against Lucie in order to take that fight. Now, I thought that Lucie potentially won that fight. I will say that. It was a unanimous decision for Virna, but it was a very close fight. But to go out there and get the job done over Lucie, I think that says a lot about who Virna is. She'll just continuously push that pace and grind you out with the grappling. Victory over Marina Rodriguez before that, one of the danger strikers in the division. Victory over Angela Hill, a girl that just consistently gets her hand raised fight to fight. To go out there and get a victory over her, that says a lot. Dating back to the last loss she had, which was against Amanda Ribas. Okay, I mean, she's really only lost to high-level competition. Carla Esparza, Mackenzie Dern. I mean, Mackenzie Dern, she has her hit or miss performances, but still, stylistically, that was a good fight for her there, with her being a high-level BJJ player. I mean, you really have to know what you're doing with your grappling when you're facing Virna, because if you don't, you're going to be a fish out of water, and that's what I'm worried about in regards to Amanda Lemos here. Not to say that Amanda Lemos is just a horrible grappler. I know that she's been continuously working on that aspect of her game. She just had a victory against Mackenzie Dern. She was able to keep that fight standing. But when you think about the Jessica Andrade fight, where she was snatched up in that standing arm triangle choke so quickly, it's just, I don't know, something about that performance screams out to me here. I feel like it's going to be a similar type of fight where Virna's going to get in on her and she's going to be able to grab a sub here. And I want to be clear that's where I'm going with this fight. I just think with this fight being a 25-minute fight and Virna having all that time to eventually get this fight down to the mat and get a sub, I think that it's going to happen. Okay. I have Virna getting a submission victory in this fight. Now, if Virna struggles, obviously, Amanda Lemos will have opportunities to really crack her up on the feet. Amanda Lemos will have that clear striking advantage. But Virna's tough, man. Virna's never been knocked out. You take a look at her 3 losses, they're all via decision. She's not easy to put away. She'll continuously march forward like a zombie. And it's for 25 minutes, man. You got to worry about this girl just getting on your back one time. And she has real tight grip. And I think Virna's going to find a sub in this fight. So yeah, I'm on Virna Jandiroba, not only to win this fight, I think that she finds the submission victory. All right, we'll hit you up at that nice, clear, and concise prediction for the main event. We won't go on too long. We won't pull up the IG of Virna and show that eye rolling around to the side and all that. Virna Jandiroba opened up as a -144 on BetUS. She's now a -135, and she was a -130 recently. So keep an eye on that line if you like Virna. The line's trending the opposite way, so you might be able to even get more of a bargain line, but be careful because it might start to dip all the way back. I like the value there. I like Virna Jandiroba in the main event. I like her to get that sub, and we'll talk about that sub on the prop edition video for this card. All right, guys, that's going to wrap this video up. I don't know if it's just me. This one seemed like it was a long one. I appreciate you guys for hanging with me all the way to the end. You guys know I'm going to hit you up with some parting words right now. That's what I like to do. But just remember, guys, that Fight Companion is kicking off for the main card for this event. I hope to see you guys here on the channel joining me. And hopefully I'll have it all figured out by this Saturday. But again, I'm going to be having guests brought on, and not just brought on in a simple way. I'm going to have it set up really dope. So make sure you have your camera ready, your mic ready, and you can watch these fights on the big screen with the teller, and we'll have a great time. So I'm working on all that type of stuff. So please do join me. Even if you don't want to hop on the screen, just join me. Hit up the chat section. I'm going to have the chats that you guys post, all the funny comments, the good comments. I'll have those posted up like right here. I'm going to set up a real nice setup for that. So your comments will be posted on the video. And just remember, every main card, we are looking to go live. All right. Appreciate you guys so much. The parting words I will hit you up with for this video here. I'll keep it quick and simple. Just remember this, guys, especially in this year, just make sure you're using your brain in every sense of that statement. Just make sure when advertisements are getting thrown your way, when people are telling you one thing or they're telling you this or that, make sure you think for yourself and make sure you do your own due diligence and your own research to try to find out what's the best decision for what you're doing, whether that's what you're putting in your body, what you're eating, all types of decisions. All right, guys, if you know what I'm saying, all types of decisions. Make sure you are making intelligent decisions based on your own thought process and not what people are feeding you. Because if you do that, there's a lot of junk that's getting thrown your way. All right, guys, remember that. Okay. Remember what I'm talking about, man. Don't be on cruise control, just going through the motions. Wake up. All right, guys. And I appreciate you guys a lot. Like I've continuously been saying, I appreciate you a lot, man. You guys all have a great week, and you will see a lot more from me. I'll catch you here soon. Signing out. Teller.
Welcome to the show. This the MMA fortune teller. Yeah.
The MMA fortune teller.
The teller.